Evergreen Heart. By Aeron. Chapter 31. From the Journal of Aeron. Much has happened since I became whole, for lack of a better way to describe it. A lot has changed as a result. My mind is at peace, that is to say, it's free of the constant struggle for control. My emotions are more stable as a result. I feel much more like my old self. My human self. There are a few changes that I've noticed, but nothing life-shattering. I still feel some, I guess you could call them wolf instincts. But those really aren't all that different from a human's more base urges. Perhaps a little more pronounced, but nothing we aren't used to controlling. And hey, my smart-ass sense of humor is back. Much to the chagrin of everyone. Still, I haven't felt this good since. I can't remember the last time I felt this good. That's a sad fact right there. Trixie and I have decided to stay in the village for the time being. We both wanted peace and quiet, and time to spend with each other. And this place is just perfect for it. The villagers have been very welcoming. Though one thing bugs me. Ever since they learned that I was the one responsible for returning the land to its lush and green state, they have started calling me Mz Evergreen. Mz, as I understand, is an honorific that means something along the lines of respected elder. Honestly, it makes me a bit uncomfortable. I tried to get them to drop it, but they seem adamant. The only ones who don't call me that are Mashika, and of course Trixie. I feel kinda silly for writing this down. Plus it's weird, writing with a quill. And besides, nobody but me can understand these words. But Trixie insisted, said it would help me make sense of things. I protested, of course, 'cause I'm a guy, and writing this down feels a little too much like keeping a diary. But hey, if it makes my girlfriend happy, I'll swallow that bit of male pride. I got nothing to prove. I put the notebook and writing utilities away inside me and stood up. It was mid-morning and the skies were clear. I've been sitting here in a small grove of my own creation a couple of 100 yards away from the village, beyond their farming fields. It's my personal retreat. A place to just sit in peace and quiet where I can clear my head. The plant life here is not native to Zebrica. Most of these come from Equestria, and the Everfree. Sustained only by my own power. Without it they would all wither and die off in a matter of days. I did that on purpose. I wouldn't want to accidentally introduce an invasive species to the environment. The wind picked up, rustling through the long leaves that formed my hair. Inside me, one of the beast's instincts stirred, and I felt the urge to run. With a smile, I gave in. I dashed from the grove, transforming into a large timber wolf. But not like the timber wolves we all know. Gone was the crude wolf-like shape of dead wood. In its place was a sleek creature of intertwined vines, flowing leaves and soft moss. A form as regal as it is powerful. I let out a howling cry of joy as I slammed into a full sprint through the long prairie grass that now covered most of the ground for miles. A dust cloud trailed behind me. It feels so good to run like this. I feel free. I feel alive. A sound like distant drums reached my ears. I recognized it though. It wasn't drums, it was the sound of hoofbeats on the ground. It wasn't long before a zeal of zebras was running behind me. I recognized them from the village. They were Shujamdogo, young warriors. Hot-headed but good-natured youths. Incredibly competitive when it comes to feats of strength and endurance. There was a festival tonight where most of them would officially graduate from colts to full stallions. It's a tradition among the zebra of these parts. The one in the lead was shouting at me. I recognized him by his mane, cut into a mohawk with a bright red streak painted into it. Mz. Today is the day. He shouted brashly. Somehow managing to make Mz sound more like old man rather than honored elder. The challenge in his voice was crystal clear. I looked back and bared my teeth in a grin, accepting the challenge head on. You think you can take me, Peppo? Show me what you got, colt. I shouted back. Putting emphasis on the word colt. I could see the sparks in his eyes at my good-natured taunt, and he let out a hard whinny that was echoed by his comrades. Island. On. Around the watering hole and back to the village. I shouted, setting the route for this race. He nodded in acknowledgement and grit his teeth, picking up speed. The earth shook as we thundered across the plains. The watering hole was a small lake at the other side of the village from where we were, which meant we would have to cross the farm fields in order to get there. Which meant ducking around crops, past farming villagers and over fences, all at high speed. If only I had a radio, because this just begged for some highway to the danger zone. I pushed off with my hind legs and vaulted over the first fence, landing on the soil with an audible thud. Peppo followed suit, with the rest of the group hot on his heels. Some of the farmers were startled by our sudden intrusion. I paid their outraged cries little heed though. I was far too focused on showing this little upstart and his pack mates who the true champion is. It's funny that I'm taking this so serious. When I was human I had all the stamina of a wet dish rag and couldn't care less about physical competitions of any kind. Now I relished every opportunity to push myself. I'm guessing that's more of the wolf's influence. I raced across the field, taking care not to destroy any of the crops as I ran. I ducked around a zebra mare who was tending to the crops. She was so startled by my passing that she took a spill in the dirt. "Sorry," I shouted as I dashed ahead. Her reply was lost to the wind, but from the way she was shaking her hoof at me she seemed okay, and a bit miffed with me. The next fence was coming up fast. Out of the blue, a Peppo suddenly came up to my left and shoulder-checked me, sending me off balance. "Playing dirty at, you'll pay for that one, kid," I thought. Thanks to him I wouldn't be able to make the jump in time, so instead I threw myself to the ground and slid underneath the fence, rather than vaulting over it. My legs scrabbled in the dirt, seeking purchase and kicking up a great dust cloud. I managed to right myself and resumed my run. Peppo had a few yards lead on me now. I lengthened my strides and started to gain back some ground. I have to admit the kid is pretty darn fast. It was open ground now, and we were both picking up speed. The watering hole was rapidly approaching. As we started our turn past it I took a flying leap and shoulder-checked Peppo the same way he did to me. I could see him trying to correct himself, but he overbalanced and took a spill, right into the water. I let out a bark of laughter as I raced on. "Payback's a bitch, kid." Behind me I could hear the rest of the zebra laughing as well. The last leg of the race was just open ground, right towards the village gate. I passed through it and skidded to a halt, kicking up yet more dust. The rest of the group thundered in after me. A lot of them were breathing hard. "Good try, boys, better luck next time," I said with a shit-eating grin. "Mzee. You cheated," Peppo shouted as he came running through the gate, his mohawk still wet and limp. "Funny, I don't remember doing anything of the sort. You pushed me into the water." "Well, after that friendly bump you gave me in the field I figured that was part of the rules. I demand a rematch. Now, you should accept your loss with grace. But if you really insist you can wrestle me." "Now that would be unfair, love," came the voice of Trixie as she walked up beside me, leaning into my side. "You would crush the poor colt." "Hey there, my pretty magician," I greeted her with a nuzzle to the cheek. "Did you boys have fun?" "I know I did, and I'm sure Peppo will agree once he calms down." Peppo glared at me with a snort, but finally relented, the spark of mischief returning to his eyes. "It was a good race. For the most part," he admitted. "We can try again tomorrow. You should save your energy for tonight. It's the big day after all," I said as I transformed into my pony form. It was then I noticed Trixie's mane for the first time. It was braided into an elaborate series of intertwining braids, and decorated with several violet beads that matched her eyes. "When did you get that done?" "You like?" The foals insisted on doing Trixie's mane as part of today's festivities. she replied as she tossed her mane lightly. It certainly looked unique. Though in all honesty I preferred her with her mane loose and mostly straight. I've always had a thing for long straight hair, and her natural look is just perfect the way it is. I said as much, causing her to blush lightly. Flatterer, she said while hip-checking me lightly. What? I can't compliment the mare I love from time to time. I grinned and leaned in to kiss her lips lightly. Trixie looked surprised when I pulled back from the kiss. What? Your lips taste like mint, she said. You like it? It's not unpleasant, she said with a grin, then leaned in again, but I better test them out some more. My reply was cut off by her lips meeting mine. I had no complaints. The evening rolled around swiftly. And with it came the ceremony before the party. The entire population gathered in the center of the village, where a giant bonfire had been set up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the fire was lit, and the village gathered in a great circle around it. Trixie and I took a seat on the sandy ground and watched as the rite of passage was beginning. Mashika strode forth and stood next to the fire, raising her staff for silence. At last, another year has passed, she said loudly and passionately. All the faces gathered here that I see, fill me with joy, and indeed with glee. Tonight we celebrate those of our dearest, who show themselves to be most fearless. And they shall indeed, need all the bravery they can accrue, to prove themselves no longer colt, but stallions true. As she finished speaking, several villagers brought in large clay pots with heavy lids that took 2 zebra to carry. I leaned in close to the zebra next to me, an old stallion, and whispered. What's happening exactly? The old stallion turned to see who had addressed him, then he smiled. I forget you are unfamiliar with our customs, Mz. I will gladly explain. He motioned to the clay pots, and the group of colts now being led into the circle. As part of their rite of passage, each young warrior has to prove his bravery by sticking their heads in a large clay pot to retrieve a string of special beads that will then be woven into their manes. The catch is that each pot also contains several biting beetles. That sent a shiver down my proverbial spine. Are they venomous? Trixie asked with a hint of nervousness in her voice. Oh no, nothing like that, said the old stallion. But they do have a fierce bite. So as you can imagine, getting bit on the snoot by them is not a pleasant experience. Has anybody ever lost an eye to those things? I asked. Oh no, the beetles don't attack the eyes. They are agitated by the stallion's breath, so they go for the nose and lips. One fellow even got bit on the tongue once. Couldn't speak for 2 days, he said with a snort of amusement. Have you done this? Asked Trixie. Oh stars above, no, he chuckled, I am but a humble crafts zebra. I never had the desire to be a warrior. Now watch, it's about to begin. Indeed it was. One by one the heavy lids were removed, then the first zebra in line walked up to his designated pot. He was breathing rapidly, either scared or trying to psych himself up. He peered into the pot and gulped. Then, after just a flicker of hesitation, he stuck his head in. Everyone held their breath. Nobody moved except for the soon-to-be stallion as he rummaged around inside the pot. Suddenly he let out a yelp and pulled back. Emerging from the pot with a string of beads in his teeth, and a large purple-green beetle stuck to the side of his muzzle. It kinda looked like a cross between a scarab and a stag beetle. With incredibly oversized pincers. It made me shiver for real this time. That looks like it hurts, I said as 2 zebra worked on removing the beetle from the stallion's face. The old zebra next to me snickered. Oh yes, he's going to be feeling that one for a while. Which is why we have the party after the ceremony. Now that he's no longer considered a colt, he's allowed to drink, so he can drink until the pain goes away. I turned my attention back to the pots as Upeppo walked up to his without even a hint of fear. He looked inside, took a deep breath, and then stuck his head in without hesitation. We all waited as he rummaged around, trying to grab his beads. He suddenly twitched, then began stomping his forehooves, but didn't take his head out just yet. His tail flicked about wildly, then he pulled back, a string of beads in his teeth, and not one, not two, but 3 beetles stuck to his face. I could see tears in his eyes, but he never uttered a sound and held his head high. I gotta hand it to him, he has guts and nerves of steel. Several zebras stomped their hooves in applause, and I heartily joined them. He earned it. After the last stallion retrieved his beads, the celebration began in earnest. Food was brought out, and several large kegs were tapped. I took a sip from an offered mug and discovered that it was actually honey mead of all things. "So, Trixie?" I said when we had a moment alone. "Yes?" she asked, tilting her head to the side. "There's a question that has been on my mind for a while. I'm just not sure how to ask it without sounding crass. What in Celestia's name are you on about now?" She replied with a hint of a smirk tugging at her lips. "And since when did you care about being crass, Mr. Buck you Celestia? If you can utter those words without batting an eye, surely you can ask this question." "Well, this is about your horn," I said awkwardly. "What about it?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "I've been looking through some books, but I couldn't find the answer there, so would you just spit it out already, you dumb goof?" she growled good-naturedly. "Are unicorn horns? Do they count as an erogenous zone? That's what this is about," she said incredulously. Then a grin split her face. "Why? Were you looking to suck on my horn?" "Look, I was just wondering, you hear the weirdest things about stuff like wing boners." Trixie actually guffawed. "Wahaha, wing boners? Oh, that's rich. I gotta remember that one. It's not that funny." I sulked. "Oh, I haven't laughed like that in ages," she said as she wiped her eyes. "But to answer your question, hun, no, a horn is not an erogenous zone. Can you imagine the awkwardness of that? Every time a unicorn would cast a spell, they'd get aroused. Messy. I guess that makes sense. I feel so stupid now." Trixie sat down next to me, leaning into my shoulder and nuzzling my cheek. "Aw, don't feel bad, sweetie." I said nothing as I downed the rest of my mead in an effort to forget this conversation entirely. I don't know why, but that night, as I watched Trixie sleep, my own mind seemed to wander. Maybe it was all the mead I drank. I must have slipped into my own state of hibernation, because I suddenly found myself inside the Everfree forest. Or at least I assumed it had to be the Everfree. No other place I know of on Equestria feels this creepy. The path before me was littered with old bones, gnawed clean and bleached by the sunlight. The grass here was dead and brown, the color of old rust. My feet followed the trail of their own accord until I reached a grove. A grove of sickly-looking trees, their branches black like charred bones. A voice on the wind reached my ears. "Where souls howl amidst the bark, lay bones forgotten in the dark. Grows the wicked master's fruit, where pain and suffering take root." Before I could look further, I was snapped out of my sleep-like state by Trixie's screams. I immediately rushed to her side. She was twisting and turning violently in her sleep, and screaming as if in pain. "Trixie! Trixie, wake up! Wake up!" I said loudly as I shook her, carefully but firmly. Her eyes snapped open and she sucked in a deep breath of air as if she had been drowning. She tried to speak but words wouldn't come. She was too choked up with emotion, lifting her front legs towards me in a desperate, silent invitation. I gently grabbed her and pulled her close, hugging her head to my chest and lightly stroking her back. "Shh, it's all right. You're safe. I'm here. Nothing is gonna hurt you," I said to her. A broken sob my only reply. I sat with her like that for some time, stroking her back whilst murmuring sweet nothings and reassurances into her ear. Eventually the tension drained out of her and she regained her composure. The nightmare again. I asked softly, to which she nodded. About what happened to your cutie mark? Another nod. It's gonna be alright, Trixie. The dreams will pass. It's not that, she said weakly. I carefully brushed her mane out of her eyes. Then what is it? I hate feeling so vulnerable. So helpless. I never want to feel like that again. She all but growled. What that bastard did to me. I was never the most confident mare. That's why I put on a mask when I perform. To appear confident and in control. But after what that bucker did to me, I can't even do that anymore. He took away what little confidence I had. And I don't know how to get it back. There are times where I'm scared of my own shadow. And I hate it. I hate it. She yelled in frustration, smacking a hoof into my chest. I hugged her tight to me. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. But the way I see it, you can get it back by becoming stronger. By doing whatever it takes to make sure nobody, pony or otherwise, can ever put you in such a position again. But Trixie isn't that strong. It's not literally about being stronger, sweetie. Sometimes it's about being smarter. If someone comes at you, step aside and trip them up instead of meeting them head on. If you can't win normally, you fight dirty. You cheat, misdirect, confuse, divide, and conquer. You don't need big, flashy spells. You are Trixie, the mare with 1,000 tricks up her sleeve. That seemed to lift her mood a little. She finally cracked a small smile and nuzzled my neck. How did I get so lucky to have some pony like you, she mumbled. Hey, that's my line. I said as I gently laid her back down in bed and pulled the blankets over her. Flatterer, she mumbled as she closed her eyes. I sat beside her for the rest of the night, stroking her mane lightly until she drifted back to sleep. The nightmares didn't return that night. It hasn't gotten any less silly for me to write in this thing, but here goes. It would seem Trixie has taken my words to heart. She's been spending a lot of time with Mashika, learning the ins and outs of zebra magics. A lot of it comes from a combination of alchemy, rituals, magical gemstones, and using runes. That's why so many zebra wear those golden rings. They are more than just a fashion statement. You can't see it, but the insides of all those rings are covered with magical runes that can produce a variety of effects. From what Mashika told me, the runes are recharged by a person's magical field. Apparently, every living thing in this world passively radiates a tiny bit of magic. Since zebra lack a natural focus like unicorns, it takes a while for a depleted rune to recharge. But most of them refill after a good night's sleep. Zebra mainly use these for more mundane tasks, like lighting campfires. But with the right combination of runes, you can create an equivalent to pretty much any spell. From the mundane, to combat spells, or even teleport magic. And this was why Trixie was so interested in them. Not just as a tool to surpass her own limits and become stronger, but for her show as well. I caught her embroidering runes all over the inside of her cape and hat. I don't know what they all do, but she's really giving this little project her all. Honestly, I found the whole thing quite interesting myself. Because these methods can grant me access to magics that would normally be beyond me. I can't sling fireballs. Not that I need to. But, with the right runes carved into my body, I could potentially create a perfect illusion to make me look, and possibly even feel like a real pony. It will take a lot of trial and error, and a lot of studying, but I'm confident I can do it. And who knows what else I could do with this. Zebra magic might have just given me an incredible edge. One I fully intend to explore to its limits. I entered our little hut in my centaur form one afternoon after doing some wood chopping to find Trixie sitting at the table staring at something. Hey love, what ya doing? Oh, Aeron. Nothing really. Just thinking. About what? What ya got there? She leaned aside slightly to reveal the object she had been staring at. It was the seed left behind by Herb. Seeing it sent a strange sensation through my core. Like a pang of guilt you sometimes feel in your heart. This felt much the same. You kept that all this time? She nodded. Can I ask why? I just felt like I owed it to him. When he showed up that day in the compound, Trixie's heart soared with hope. And then later, he brought you back to me. He really was unique. I said as I gently rubbed my cheek against hers. Isn't there anything you can do? She asked after a moment. I shook my head. The spark of life is gone. That seed is just a dead husk now. Can't you breathe new life into it? It wouldn't be the same. Herb was unique. He had been apart from me for so long he started to evolve as his own entity. Please, just try. I feel like we both owe him that much. I kissed her lips. All right, Trixie. If you feel that strongly about it. I do. She said as she hoofed the seed over to me. I cupped her hoof and the seed in my hands as I began to focus my magic through it. I dredged up every memory I had of Herb. Trying to figure out not how to recreate him, that was impossible, but instead to think of what made him unique. Trixie, I want you to do something. What is it? I want you to think about Herb, everything you can remember, but mostly what made him unique. Take that memory, turn it into a spell, and touch the seed with your horn. How will that help? I don't know if it will. But if we're doing this, we're doing it together. With a smile, she complied, her horn sparked into life. A small bright little light on its tip shimmering like a firefly. The moment she touched it to the seed, I reached into the earth and drew a significant amount of energy from the ley line. The two magics mingled, and then entered the seed, which began to glow with a soft green hue. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the seed trembled and burst, a tiny sprout emerging. Quickly it grew into a complete bell sprout. But instead of a yellow bulb for a head, this one had a pale pink one. Welcome to the world, I said. Trixie's smile was threatening to tear her face in half. What shall we name it? She asked. How about you name this one? The pink bell sprout turned to Trixie, eagerly awaiting her answer. Trixie rubbed her nose against the little bulb affectionately. Spice. Your name will be Spice. I left Trixie to get acquainted with our new pet buddy. I honestly don't know what to classify this one as. But it's not important. I stepped back outside to get some more work done when my mind was suddenly overwhelmed with visions of a dark forest clearing, littered with bones. Where souls howl amidst the bark, lay bones forgotten in the dark. Grows the wicked master's fruit, where pain and suffering take root. Echoed through my mind. With an effort I shook myself out of it. That vision had been a lot stronger than the last one. Where was it coming from? What did this mean? My good mood soured, I went back to work. Aeron, what are you doing? And why did you reshape the landscape? I looked back to see Trixie walk up the steep rise. We were atop a rock formation of my own making, just besides the watering hole. We were roughly 35 feet above the water below. The large pond looked rather small from up here. I thought you didn't like heights. Trixie said as she looked over the edge. I don't. Then what are you doing up here? This is gonna sound a little odd. Odder than usual. I'm trying to figure out how to fly. She gave me a blank stare. What? I know it sounds a little crazy. Try a lot crazy. Oh hush you. I said with a mildly miffed expression. I've been trying to imitate a Pegasus. But it doesn't work. My body is simply too heavy. I've tried replacing it with lighter woods, but they don't have the durability or strength I require. My legs kept snapping off. I tried to give the wings more lift by making them bigger, only to end up with wings 3 times as large as Celestia's, and still not getting any lift. And again they snapped. I even lost my head last time. I said, pointing down at the pond where my previous head bobbed atop the water's surface like a bizarre coconut. That's a little disturbing. But would make a great nightmare night prop, right? I said with a smirk. She ignored me. Well, here goes nothing, I said as I transformed my body. This time I went for bat pony wings instead of trying for Pegasus. Using tough, leaf-like material for the membranes, I made the wood of my body lighter and thinner, even going so far as to hollow out my limbs. Already I heard and felt the wood creaking, straining to hold together. I spread my wings and took a leap, and promptly plummeted down into the water, both of my wings snapping in half before I got 5 feet from the rock formation. As I pulled myself from the water, I heard Trixie giggling softly as she walked down to meet me. Back to the drawing board, she asked me with mirthful eyes. Nat, I'm done with this for now, I said, making a downward motion with my front hoof to sink the rocks back into the ground, without a trace of them ever having been there. Well, ponies didn't invent the wheel overnight. I'm sure you'll come up with something. Before I could reply, there was a magical tremor in the air, then a multicolored blast wave lit up the horizon. What was that? Trixie asked with mild confusion. I expanded my magical senses to try and confirm what I already knew. And after a brief moment of focus, I did. That would be Rainbow Dash's legendary sonic rain boom. Trixie cocked her head as she watched the rainbow trail move across the sky, slowly growing fainter and fainter until it vanished on the opposite horizon. All the way out here. Well, Dash may brag a lot, but she truly is amazing in some ways. Besides, this isn't the first time she's done one. And you know all this how exactly? Lucky guess. I opted, then face-hoofed at my own stupidity. Yeah, pull the other tail. It's got a bell on it. This isn't the first time you seem to know exactly what's happening before any pony else does. I think it's time you told Trixie exactly how you keep doing that. You owe me that much. I closed my eyes and sighed mentally before replying. I guess I did promise you I would explain everything one day, back when we first met. But I warn you, Trixie, this explanation gets pretty crazy. Aeron dear, for as long as Trixie has known you, normal rarely seems to enter the equation where you're concerned. Yeah, well, I watched the last bit of rainbow light fade into the distance. Don't say I didn't warn you. And so I told her everything this time. I explained to her the concept of cartoons and animation, and how to me, all of this started out as just a children's show. One that suddenly became my life. And my death. You know what I mean. I explained to her how I knew so much about this world, even though I'm technically a stranger here. She took it better than I had anticipated. So let me get this straight. In the world you came from, Trixie is nothing but a caricature? Some two-dimensional secondary character in a play. She said with surprising calm. I'm not sure how to feel about that. Before you say anything, Trixie, know that my feelings for you are real and genuine. Yes, you may be an imaginary person in my old world. But here, in this one, you are as real as the ground beneath your hooves, or the stars in the sky. How does Trixie know you aren't just saying that? How does she know you haven't been manipulating her from the start with this otherworldly knowledge you possess? I would never do that to you. So you would do it to some pony else? What? No. Well, maybe if they were evil. I said, to which she gave me a funny look. Trixie, the mare I've gotten to know is nothing like the one I remember from the show. You've already surpassed that version of you in every way. Know that whatever we have here, now, that is real. I'm sorry. She mumbled. It's just a little hard to comprehend. How do you think I felt when I first got here? Just how did you get here? Honestly, I have no idea. All I remember is that I was on my way home, then there was a flash of lightning, and I ended up in the Everfree forest. I have no idea how that's even possible since lightning doesn't work like that. Maybe the stars were aligned in a specific pattern that only happens once in a million years, and that opened up a trans-dimensional singularity at the point where the lightning struck, which then sucked me in, instead of burning me to a crisp, I don't know, I said as I waved my arms about frantically. Would you ever go back if we found a way to? We won't, so it's a moot point. Humor me. No, I wouldn't. Heck, I couldn't. Not like this. I motioned to myself. They'd have me locked up and dissected before you could say friendship is magic. Trixie rolled her eyes. That is such a terrible line. I just shrugged. So you really wouldn't go back if you had the chance? I shook my head. There really isn't anything worth returning to for me. Though I would like the chance to tell my parents what happened to me. I can only imagine how devastated my mom must have felt after I vanished last year. Trixie's ears drooped slightly. Yet. Sorry, didn't mean to bring that up. It's okay. I've made my peace with the situation. There's really nothing I can do but move forward. I said as I leaned close to her and nuzzled her cheek. Besides, I have you. That makes it a lot easier to cope. The great and pleasant Trixie does have that effect on ponies. She said with a straight face. And so modest too. I replied with a smirk. Who needs modesty when you have all this? She said with humor in her voice as she waved a hoof at herself whilst striking a pose. Careful dear, your ego is showing. So? What ya gonna do about it? She said with a grin. She was clearly trying to distract me. And I'll admit, it was working. You'll find out when I catch you. I grinned, then lunged for her. She gave a playful shriek and ran for it. It didn't take too much effort to catch her. But then, I did kinda cheat. Since I can transform into the shape of animals much faster than a pony. A little cheetah speed, a jump, and in no time flat I had her pinned beneath me in the grass. Gotcha now, my pretty. I said in a faux villain voice. Oh no, whatever shall become of the adorable and fair Trixie now, she cried in an overly dramatic fashion. By way of reply I rolled her over onto her back, then proceeded to blow raspberries on her belly. Eliciting a series of shrieks and uncontrolled laughter from her. Kya ha ha ha, stop it, you crazy I ha 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 ha. Would you rather I just eat you? I asked, letting her catch her breath. Her face suddenly turned pink. That's a little direct, she stammered. What? I asked, then I realized what I just said. Oh. No, I didn't mean. Trixie knows what you meant. All the same, she wouldn't be opposed to, you know, she said. Giving me a look that was somewhere between seductive and shy. Just not out here. I looked at our surroundings. We were in the tall grass besides the pond. There wasn't a soul in sight. Afraid of getting caught? I teased her lightly. Her furious blush was adorable. Maybe. She all but squeaked. Would you be more comfortable back in our hut? She nodded silently. I grinned and then lifted her onto my back. Hey, Trixie is not a foal. She can walk on her own, she lightly protested, but only lightly. Not after I'm done with you. I said. Her adorable little eep was like music to my ears. We earned some odd looks from some of the villagers we passed. What with me carrying her like a sack of vegetables. But I didn't care, and Trixie was in no position to protest. Having hid her beet red face in her hat. Before long we got back to the little hut we shared. I discovered a few new things that afternoon. Namely that Trixie is a bit of a squealer. And I love making her squeal. And, that to me, she tastes like blueberries. And that is all I will say about that. Later that afternoon, Trixie was taking a nap to recover from her ordeal, whilst I was outside in the little garden behind our hut. I stood in the sun with Spice resting atop my head. We were both just relaxing and soaking up some rays when a whisper on the wind drew my attention. With the whisper came an icy chill, and suddenly I lost control of my legs. And as I fell forward my vision shifted. I hit the ground in the Everfree forest. Bones crumbled underneath my hooves as I righted myself. The air was icy with the chill of the grave. I looked up to behold the black forms of the gnarled trees. Blood dripping from their twisted branches. Evil green light pulsed from cracks in the bark of their trunks. In the distance the howl of a dozen wolves pierced the air. Where souls howl amidst the bark, lay bones forgotten in the dark. Grows the wicked master's fruit, where pain and suffering take root. As the words echoed through my mind, I felt something pull at my core. Like ghostly claws trying to tear it free and towards the twisted trees. The sensation filled me with all-encompassing dread. Then I realized I wasn't the one who felt afraid. I felt the urge to look behind me, and when I did I saw the beast, the wolf, standing there. Its posture was low with its ears laid back and tail tucked in. The fear that radiated off of it was palpable. I looked back to the gnarled trees. And I could swear they stared back with malice. "You can't have him!" I shouted defiantly, standing up to put myself between the wolf and the trees. And as I did, the vision faded and I was back in the hut. I only knew one thing for certain. This had to stop. After she woke up and we shared a meal, that is to say, she ate and I sat with her and chit-chatted, I told Trixie I was going for a run. This not being an uncommon occurrence didn't raise any suspicions. So with a kiss to the cheek and a wave goodbye I ran out the hut, and then sprinted from the village. I covered a lot of ground in short order, and just as the sun set behind the horizon I arrived at the hoof of Zebrica. I climbed the rocky path until I reached the plateau, then settled down. I needed answers, and this seemed like the best place to go. I took the equivalent of a deep breath and opened my magical senses to their fullest. The twilight of the landscape lit up with thousands of tiny lights as I connected with the planet's life force. I tapped the energy of the ley line to expand my conscious even further. Honestly, I don't know what I was hoping to find. I wasn't even sure what the question was. Basically what I was doing was putting out a generic call for help. The plant life sang to me. Like a quiet hymn in the background. Insects gathered in the trees, adding their sounds to the mix. Fireflies filled the darkened skies in the hundreds, dancing like tiny embers in the dark, adding their light to the glow of the plants. All the world was colors and patterns of indescribable beauty. As if everything was made of rainbows and black lights and fireworks. I don't say it enough, but I will always feel privileged for being able to see this side of the world. Of existence itself. It's one of the few good things that come with being what I am. What am I supposed to do? A low whine answered my question. I looked to the side where the beast had appeared like a ghost. But it looked more like Luna's mane. As if made of star stuff. It looked at me with saddened eyes. "They are in trouble, aren't they?" The beast whined. "I wish I could. But I'm banished." The wolf uttered a low growl. "I know, it's incredibly stupid." I don't know what she was thinking. Now it let out a soft cry, like a dog. I would if it was just me. But I have to think of Trixie too. I can't just uproot everything we have. It's not right. A sad howl was my reply. "You wouldn't understand. You are just an animal after all." The wolf growled and huffed at me in irritation. "Sorry, I didn't mean it like that." The beast walked to the edge of the plateau, raised its head to the sky and let loose a long keening howl. Then it looked back to me with sad eyes. "I can't. I just can't." My mind was suddenly overcome with another vision. No, not a vision, a memory. A memory from the beast. A memory of nothing but endless hunger. Of madness, and a gnawing empty pain. Season upon season passing by. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, all the same. Endlessly hungry, empty. Lost in the dark, my form falling apart, a brief surge of hope for release, followed by an icy grasp pulling me back and locking me away again in a fresh prison. With a jolt I emerged from the memory. I could only stare at the beast in silence. Its sad eyes locked onto mine. I felt wetness stain my cheeks, and realized I was crying. "You're right. If I don't do something, no one will." The wolf slowly walked towards me, resting its head against my chest. I will have to talk to Trixie first though. I won't do this without her approval. The wolf let out a soft snort. I knew you would understand, I said as the beast slowly vanished into nothing. The hour was late as I slowly walked through the door of our hut. I was not looking forward to this. Trixie, we need to talk. Aeron? What's wrong? I don't really know where to start, I said, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. I've been having these, I guess visions. Visions, she said skeptically, since when? They have happened on and off for a while now. They come out of nowhere, but are always more or less the same. The first time was months ago. I didn't pay it much attention at first. But since then they kept happening. What did these visions show you? Something evil, back in Equestria. In the Everfree. I think it's the source of all the timber wolves. Go on. There's this grove of twisted, malformed trees. There are bones everywhere. These trees are practically dripping with evil. They keep the souls of the timber wolves trapped and in pain. They are the source of a terrible curse. And there's this voice. A voice. Yes. I hear it every time one of these visions hits. And what does this voice say? I took a second to make sure I remembered it properly, then recited the rhyme where souls howl amidst the bark, lay bones forgotten in the dark. Grows the wicked master's fruit, where pain and suffering take root. She scoffed. Well, that's not ominous or anything. I've been talking to the beast, and. Wait, back up. I thought you were rid of the beast. It's not the same as before, I said, to which she gave me a questioning look. It's just a simple wolf spirit now. Usually it's dormant. But today it sort of spoke to me. Not with words, but I somehow understood what it was trying to tell me. Really? What did it tell you then? It wants me to go back and free the other wolves from the curse, I think. You think? She deadpanned. Well, like I said, he doesn't actually speak, I said sheepishly. You probably think I'm completely fucking crazy. If you were any other person, I might have thought that. But it's you. You don't do normal. She shook her head ruefully. So what happens now? What do you want to do? I don't know. I'm torn here, Trixie, I said whilst throwing my arms up. I don't think I can really ignore these visions. They kept getting more powerful each time they happened. And honestly, I don't think I can ignore the suffering of those wolves. They are innocent in all this, no matter what they may have done since the curse fell on them. I've always been a softie when it comes to dogs, and wolves are the ancestors of dogs. So the feeling extends to them pretty much by default. Then don't ignore this. You do what you need to do. But I can't. I can't go back to Equestria. It will open up a whole ugly can of worms if I show my face there. We finally have some peace and quiet. I don't want to just uproot that and throw everything back into chaos. I can't do that to you. You deserve a safe home and good life, without having to worry about all this nonsense. You forget love, Trixie wasn't made for peace and quiet. Trixie was made to be the center of attention. To be in the thick of it, wild and loud and flashy. She said as she reared up on her hind legs and threw her cape open. Several tiny fireworks exploded outwards in a dazzling array of colors. And Trixie has made a decision for herself a while ago. That wherever you go, she will follow. Because you and I, we are together. I am yours and you are mine. So if you need to go back to Equestria, then we will go together. I slowly walked up to her and hugged her. I hugged her with all the love in my being. Thank you.